You know how to divide by whole numbers, but in this video we're going to learn the divisibility rules. How can you tell if a number can be divided by another number? Can 80 be divided by 5 without a remainder? Can 13 be divided by 2? Can 52 be divided by 3 without a remainder? Let's take a look. First, the definition. What does divisibility actually mean? It means that the number can be divided with no remainder. If a number is divisible by another number, it means that when we divide, we are left with no remainder, or the remainder is 0. So let's take a look at the divisibility rules for the numbers 2 through 10. Let's start dividing. Let's look at what happens when we divide by 2. Remember, divisibility means that a number can be divided with no remainder. So how can you tell if a number can be divided by 2 without a remainder? Let's look at 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. When we subtract, we're left with 0. Now let's try 17. 17 divided by 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. But when we subtract, we're left with 1. Now let's try 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18, and we're left with 0. What do you notice about the 16 and the 18? Well, they're both even numbers. 17 is an odd number. We can see that that had a remainder of 1. And so even numbers are divisible by 2, meaning we can take even numbers, divide them by 2, and our remainder will always be 0. These are the numbers that end with 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. So the first rule is, if a number is divisible by 2, it means it has to be an even number. Those are the numbers that end with the digits 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. Let's go on to dividing by 3. Remember, if something is divisible by 3, it can be divided by 3 and have 0 as the remainder. Let's divide 15 by 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. We subtract, we're left with 0. Let's try 17. 17 divided by 3 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. We have a remainder of 2. Let's try 18. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. When we subtract, we're left with 0. So let's take a look at the 15, which is an odd number. And we may be able to assume that odd numbers can be divided by 3 with no remainder. But look at 17. That's odd, but it has a remainder of 2. 18 is an even number. And when we divided that by 3, we got a remainder of 0. So let's try adding the digits in each one of these numbers where we were left with a remainder of 0. If we take the digits in the number 15, 1 plus 5, and we add them together, we get 6. Can 6 be divided by 3? Yes. So therefore 15 is divisible by 3. Let's check 18. Let's take the digits 1 plus 8. It gives us 9. Can 9 be divided by 3 without a remainder? Yes. And so therefore 18 is divisible by 3. And so the rule is, a number is divisible by 3 if the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. So let's add that to our rule. Divisible by 3 if the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. Now let's check dividing by 5. Remember, a number is divisible by 5 if we can divide it by 5 and there is no remainder. Let's try 10 divided by 5. 5 into 10 goes twice. 2 times 5 is 10. We're left with a remainder of 0. 12 divided by 5. 5 into 12 goes twice. 2 times 5 is 10. We're left with a remainder of 2. 15 divided by 5. 5 into 15 goes 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. When we subtract, we're left with 0. We can see that the numbers that we divided and got a remainder of 0 are 10 and 15. So let's look at them. 10 is an even number. But 12 is also an even number, and that had a remainder when we divided by 5. 15 is an odd number, and that had a remainder of 0 when we divided by 5. Let's look at the last digit in 10 and 15. And we see there is a 0 and a 5. And so the rule is numbers that end with 0 and 5 are divisible by 5, meaning they will always have a remainder of 0 when we divide by 5. So let's add that to our list of rules. A number is divisible by 5 if it ends with 0 or 5. Let's look at one more. Dividing by 10. Let's look at the number 10. 10 divided by 10 gives us once. 1 times 10 is 10. When we subtract, we're left with 0. 62 divided by 10. 10 into 62 goes 6 times. 6 times 10 is 60. When we subtract, we're left with 2. 40 divided by 10. 10 into 40 goes 4 times. 4 times 10 is 40. When we subtract, we're left with 0. 10 and 40, they're both even numbers. And so we may be tempted to say, well, even numbers could be divided by 10. But 62 is also even. And it had a remainder when we divided by 10. Let's again look at the last digit. They are both zeros. And so the rule is numbers that end with 0 are divisible by 10, meaning they can be divided by 10 with no remainder. Let's add that to our rules. A number is divisible by 10 if it ends with 0. And so let's look at some other rules for the numbers 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9, which are not typically learned. A number is divided by 4 without a remainder. A number is divisible by 4 if the last two digits are a multiple of 4. A number is divisible by 6, meaning we can divide it by 6 and have a no remainder, if it is even and the sum of the digits is also divisible by 3. A number is divisible by 7 if we take the last digit, double it, subtract it from the initial number, and the answer we get is divisible by 7. That's a long, complicated one, which we normally don't use. A number is divisible by 8 if the last 3 digits form a number that's divisible by 8. And a number is divisible by 9 if the sum of the digits is divisible by 9. Now let's look at the 100 chart. Let's pick a number from the chart to see if that number is divisible by 2, 3, 5, and 10. Let's look at the number 36. Is 36 divisible by 2? First of all, to check for divisibility by 2, we have to ask ourselves, is it even? Because a number is divisible by 2 if it is even. Is 36 even? Well, even numbers end in 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0, and 36 ends in 6. So yes, this is even, and therefore 36 is divisible by 2. What about is 36 divisible by 3? The rule for dividing by 3 is the digits have to add up to a number that is divisible by 3. So let's check the sum of the digits. 3 plus 6 is 9, and 9 can be divided by 3 without a remainder. So 36 is divisible by 3. What about divisible by 5? Can 36 be divided by 5 without a remainder? The rule for dividing by 5 is the last digit has to end with 0 or 5. In this case, that is not the case. 36 ends in 6, and so therefore 36 is not divisible by 5. Is 36 divisible by 10? Again, we look at the last digit because the rule is it has to end with a 0. 36 does not end with 0, and therefore it is not divisible by 10. And now it's quiz time. Is this number divisible by 2? You have 5 seconds to answer. 25. Time's up. No, 25 is not divisible by 2. Numbers that are divisible by 2 have to be even numbers, and 25 is odd. Question 2. Is this number divisible by 3? 72. Time's up. Yes, 72 is divisible by 3. We check the digits and we add them. 7 plus 2 is 9, and 9 is divisible by 3. We can divide 9 by 3 and get 0 as our remainder. Next question. Is this number divisible by 5? 11. Time's up. No, 11 is not divisible by 5. Numbers are only divisible by 5 if they end with 5 or 0. And this last digit is a 1. Last question, is this number divisible by 10? 620. Time's up? Yes, numbers are divisible by 10 if they end with 0, and this number does end with 0. And now you've solved the mystery of how to determine which numbers are divisible by following the rules. Well done.